Welcome to Daredevil in the Details, a show that explores and dotes on the philosophy and themes of Netflix's Daredevil, a digression collection brought to you by A Method to the Madness and ZeroIndent. I'm author DC McNeil, and I'm joined, as always, by Pat from A Method to the Madness. Pat, what's the vibe? What's the energy? Where are we at?
The energy is that these are some good episodes, but in bad conditions. I already told you I watched one of these on a plane.
Yep.
I
Peak
couldn't
viewing
see
experience.
It was actually crazy, like how incomprehensible like some of the fight scenes were when you're watching it on a phone.
Yeah, it's a dark kind of few episodes. You need a nice TV that can do dark really well, I feel.
Well, that was the thing. I watched it. The plane was all dark, like all the lights were off, and I still couldn't tell what the hell was happening.
Damn. You know,
yeah, it was crazy.
So you watch television how it was always meant to be made, on a phone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Where we were always headed.
That's definitely like, you know, my first world privilege speaking. Whenever something is not on my like huge 77-inch OLED, I'm like, what the fuck is this shit?
You're like, this isn't cinema. Someone called Chris Nolan.
But yeah, otherwise, good episodes.
It's a good episodes. Really long though. The first thing written in my notes is these episodes are long, and the long has like 5 O's in it.
Mm-hmm.
They're just long ass fucking episodes, man. I'm not complaining. It's just an observation. Like the second I started it, I was like, "That's really this." It's an hour and an hour and 8 minutes. What the fuck? Like they're just they're big ones.
Like I love doing the show, but every time it comes around to watching the episodes, I'm like, "Fuck, this takes so much time out of my weekend."
It's a lot of time. Look, I've been doing I've started on the pre-production for the Assassin's Creed show, and if you think this takes a long time.
Oh my god.
I don't want to tell you how many years it's going to take us, but that's future trauma. This episode we are talking about episode 21, which is season 2, episode 8, Guilty as Sin. We're talking about episode 22, 7 Minutes in Heaven, season 2, episode 9, and episode 23, The Man in the Box, season 2, episode 10. Before we get into the summary, Pat, the shirts have arrived. They're finally it's here.
Wow.
You can see it on my person. So you can go to UnderInk.Press and buy yourself a Daredevil in the Details tee. It's embroidered, Pat. It's got that nice kind of embroidered feel. None of that cheap screen print shit, and it's a really nice premium fabric. This is a t-shirt you could buy, probably wear it for the rest of your life. It's a nice tee.
It's higher quality production than the actual show. God damn.
Probably true. You know what? Probably accurate. Yes, it's a nice bloody t-shirt. So definitely go check that out. UnderInk.Press. Let's get into it. Let's hear the summary for Guilty as Sin, which was written by Whit Anderson and directed by Michael Uppendahl.
Daredevil and Elektra are ambushed by ninjas at the dig site who can mask their heartbeats, making them invisible to Matt. Our heroes are on the ropes, close to death, when Stick intervenes, saving their lives. But not before Elektra is stuck with a poisoned blade. They escape in a fraught chase and take shelter at Matt's apartment. Stick bosses Matt around, and together they brew a counteragent for the poison. While Elektra rests, Stick reveals she works for him, and goes on to lay out the war he fights against a mystical ancient order of bad guys obsessed with immortality called the Hand, and Stick, their opponent, occupies the role of the Chaste. Matt tells Stick to take a long walk and asks Elektra to stay with him and defeat the Hand on Daredevil's terms. Elektra, so taken by Matt's belief in her goodness, agrees. In court, Nelson begins to gain the upper hand over Reyes. His efforts tee up Matt to bring Frank Castle on the stand to clinch their defense. Karen heads to Matt's apartment to convey this request and walks in on Stick and, of course, Elektra in Matt's bed. In court, Matt subconsciously reproduces Frank's speech from the rooftop sequence about the city needing heroes willing to do what is necessary. As silence settles over the court, Frank asks if he can say something. The judge allows it, and Frank raves that he is guilty. He is the Punisher. Matt guesses someone got to Castle, but Foggy and Karen don't care. They both blame Matt for their loss, and Karen tells him she's done. Back at the apartment, Matt and Elektra are attacked by a teenage ninja who Elektra instinctively murders. Meanwhile, Frank arrives at prison. He crosses the recreation room where someone lifts an impossibly heavy deadlift. I don't know if that's a deadlift. Camera pans on.
No, that's not right. It's an impossibly heavy barbell, right?
Yeah, it's a bench press. Yeah,
bench press. I'm a gym guy.
The camera pans onto the face of none other than the kingpin himself, Wilson Fisk.
Really botched that last paragraph, didn't we?
We? No, I'm kidding.
Okay. Wow. All right. You fucked up my cool line. The camera pans to the face of none other than the kingpin himself, Wilson Fisk. Like,
Yeah.
it's played so well in that moment. Look, okay, I don't want to start at the ending, but you mentioned this in the I believe it was the conclusion of season 1 and also in our episode 0 for the show, around this idea that, like, Daredevil just kind of refuses to let its characters stop evolving and, like, stops kind of continuing to be involved in the story in interesting ways. When this first happened, did you know that he was coming back, or did this have the effect that it had for me, where I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah. No, it comes out of nowhere, like he does in season 1, kind of. He returns, and then it sort of picks up right where it left off in season 1, and it's like really sort of coherent. And it's it's not like a bottle episode or anything like that. Like the events of all the plot lines are still naturally progressing, even with this interruption of Stick just randomly appearing. It's like really cool storytelling. Yeah.
Yeah, the way in which this thing that Elektra, and also the Stick positioning as well, where Elektra re-entering Matt's life was at Stick's behest, and Stick was involved in season 1 and departed the frame. And so too Nobu departed the frame in season 1 when he died, but he's also back and involved again in some capacity. It's really, it's very cool. The thing I want to start with, though, because I'm sure we'll get to that as we work through, the thing I want to start with is, you commented about the genre of, like, this moving into much more of like the comic booky kind of genre space, whereas the first season is very much in that religious epic modality in a lot of ways. For me, the ninjas being able to conceal their heartbeats is such an interesting textual move, because, like, you can't do that.
That's against the rules.
That's not how physics is. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the thing that I wanted to kind of, I mean, it's, and the way that this is resolved in this scene, not resolved because Matt still has trouble with these guys, is Elektra's like, listen to their weapons. And so he can hear the swords. But that means that he's basically vulnerable to kicks and punches and all kinds of different things like that. But the thing that's interesting for me here is Matt's kind of powers and blindness, while there is the kind of, there is the chemical accident that blinds him, it isn't spun like it is in the comics as the mutagen that made the Ninja Turtles and is inherently gonna give you powers. Like, Matt's ability to do all the stuff he does are, like, inherently real and physical. Like, he trains with Stick to master his body to be able to do this. But here, like, they're not superpowers, if you know what I mean. They're just capabilities that in an abstract capacity are possible in reality. Whereas the hand being able to do this with their heartbeat is literally, like, impossible. You can't do that. You can conceal your heartbeat from someone if you have, like, a ball under your armpit and things like that. You can't just mask it. And for me, this is them slowly maneuvering up to the big kind of reveal, around Nobu, and then what the rest of this season is kind of interested in plot wise. But I think it's also not a coincidence that Stick returns in this moment, obviously for plot reasons. But Stick is the one who teaches and controls, like, the physical realm, right? Like, he teaches Matt how to do this. He teaches Elektra how to do this. His powers are purely based in the physical and in the reality. And as the mystical returns into the frame, so too does its opponent, which is the physical. Like, they're sort of positioned quite, honestly, pretty cleanly in this series.
Stick is like a facilitator of the mystical, pretty much. I mean, the thing about, like, he's trained himself to be a kick flippin' ninja, but his, super hearing and stuff, that's kind of mystical. So the show is always, it pretends like it didn't. It just dips its pinky toe into the magical, and then moves on quite quickly. And, just likes to not really delve into that, but for season 2 they kind of had to, and so it's. I mean, I think that's why a lot of people don't like it that much. It's kind of like. Sorry to keep bringing up Assassin's Creed, but I think it's kind of the same reason people don't like the modern Assassin's Creed is because it's magic, even though it's always been magic, but like, it's more it's more at the forefront this time. And I don't know, people just have this, like, people have an affinity for like realism, or like just some non-mysticism, I suppose.
Yeah. I just think a lot of people were like the Dark Knight pilled in a lot of ways, where they're like, like superhero films should be in this mode of like gritty and real, and like that's perfectly fine. But I think especially because this is in conversation with Batman directly, and as we talked about before, started as a parody of that character. I think people just bring some of those expectations where they don't belong. Is my general kind of feeling. Yeah,
that makes sense.
The other thing this does for me is, we talked about this last episode, but Matt, as Matt moves further from his real life and his responsibilities, i.e. Karen, and more into like the Daredevil realm, reality becomes less certain as you get these mystical elements start to come in more and more. And as Matt kind of repositions his own priorities, Elektra re-enters his life, and she represents this, she represents the Daredevil side of things with Stick and all that sort of stuff. And it just has a really kind of easy effect of going, the more time he spends doing this stuff, the further he is from like what he should be doing, right? Which is his real life, and like being a dude who's out there getting stuff done. But then at the same time, he's like up on his cross, and he's like, well, I don't have a choice. And I just think it's a cool structural maneuver to have all of these things happening at once. Kind of, what's the word, like signaling to each other in some ways. Yeah, very just neat kind of buttoned down storytelling. Really, really competent for me.
Yeah, and there's like sort of like multiple like parallel things going on regarding. Matt is the bridge between the two worlds, like the mystical and the mystical Stick Elektra world, and then the more grounded foggy Karen world. And like how Matt is just so incredulous toward all this hand chase stuff, even though he's embroiled in it, and then he can't really explain himself to Matt and Foggy for the same reasons. And it just creates a lot of like natural tension with his character, and in relation to the actual plot.
Yeah, exactly. You just made me think of something which is I've been meaning to ask you for a while, and it's just never really come up. Is what do you make of, given everything we just talked about, what do you make of sort of Frank's position, right? Obviously the dyad of the Nobu magicy stuff and Daredevil and Elektra and Stick, like that stuff makes sense to me. That's pretty clear. And obviously Matt's relationship to let's call it Foggy and Nelson. That's not the name of the law firm. Nelson and Murdock. How do you think Frank's kind of role within this, fits into that framework, or what does it do to that framework in being here?
Yeah, so this is what makes this season like so interesting, is that like the connections between Frank and the Hand, or rather, maybe more aptly, Frank and Elektra, is like just thematic. It's about like the nature of evil, and like the nature of the nature of like killing and not being able to control what you do, and and by extension, like if someone like that is still redeemable, and like people with is sort of exploring these the psyche of people with compulsions of violence and stuff like that.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense to me. And I think that's also playing in this space that Matt is constantly in, which is like, what happens if he does cross that line? You know, if you have no rules, then what's stopping you from just doing this whenever? I mean, I guess the next thing that happens is Elektra gets she gets hit with the poison blade, and they kind of Stick drives a car.
Yeah, I know. It's hilarious.
So funny. This show fucking rules. It's like one of the funniest. Like, it's so funny in juxtaposition with how serious the stakes are in this moment. It's brilliant.
Yeah. But I love how it, like, you know, makes sense. He can sense what's in front of him.
It makes sense, yeah.
Yeah, if anything, like, he probably is a really good driver. You know?
Well, as we see.
As we see, yeah.
I couldn't get away from ninjas in a car like that.
And I love how he, like, you know, he takes the crossbow and just shoots it, and it just nails someone.
It's so good.
One of the ninjas. Yeah.
Stick has a real flair for the dramatic while being an absolute shitheel the entire time. I love his attitude to the world, which is like he just has this air of like, ugh, do I have to deal with everyone all the time?
Yeah, everyone with their feelings
Ugh.
and their humanness.
God, can't you just be an uncaring fucking soldier like I trained you to be? Gosh. The other thing that happened. Okay, so yeah, they're in the chase. They have a little bit of back and forth. Elektra's obviously in a bad way, and they make it back to Matt's place. And Stick is like, "Yo, I can fix her. You know, get me a bunch of items and do it now." What's kind of interesting to me about this is Stick's like, "Here's a list of ingredients I need," and then doesn't do anything to gather any of them and expects Matt to do it all. Like, he just stands there.
He's in Matt's apartment. He doesn't know where stuff is.
Matt tells him something's in the fridge, and he just stands there and doesn't do it. And Matt's like, "I thought you got it." He's like, "No."
That is
it's
true.
just interesting as a character maneuver. And then one of the things is like brew a thing of tea, which ends up, of course, being for Stick, not anything to do with curing the poison. Which is very funny to me.
Yeah.
Life or death situation, you're gonna need a cup of tea.
Yeah, why? It must.
Yeah, he did all that driving. Who doesn't drive that often? Well, okay, what do you make of... I don't know where I want to go to now. I guess, you know, I do want to talk about Stick's explanation, because we get a bit of exposition here about the war, as it were, that we've heard about in season 1.
Mm-hmm.
We do cut away to something Frank related before that, don't we? Because I've written here, Frank killing 32 men all by himself doesn't feel like it helps their case, but I don't know what I'm referring to there.
So I think it cuts to the opening statement where Matt doesn't show,
and it's
it's just foggy.
Yeah,
and he's like freaking out.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. And it's Frank's like old commanding officer from when they were in Afghanistan, and he tells the story of Frank single-handedly killing 32 combatants to keep his squad alive, to help his squad escape to a QZ.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was a really interesting story because it positions Frank as a guy that can do this, right? Which is never in contention. Like, no one's ever like, well, Frank didn't do the shootings. Like, everyone has agreed that he did them. Like, there's sufficient evidence. But it also, to me, it's like, if I wanted to prove that some injury that happened to him after this time altered his brain chemistry in such a way that he's going to go around killing random people, you know, like he's done, it doesn't serve the case to provide an example of before he was shot in the head of him doing that.
Yeah, well, it might be because it's not like his capacity to do it was never in question. It was like the motive behind it. It's like his, his motivation. And his motivation in the wherever he was, Afghanistan, was to save his men. Whereas, what's changed is that he seems to be on like a revenge warpath.
Gotcha. That makes sense, right? Because they're sort of arguing like, well, before Matt gets involved in the next day, but their whole defense is like, you know, he's a good dude, and he's been led astray and failed by our system, and like there's sufficient evidence that like he's not mentally functioning properly, and that's the reason why he's done all of this, because they have to mount some kind of defense.
It is an interesting point you bring up though about how like he the story is explaining how he was always capable of this, and then the sergeant goes, if it was up to me he'd have a Medal of Honor. Pretty much the same thing he's doing, just in different contexts. Maybe it is sort of meant to make you think about like, well, in the context of war it's completely fine, but in the just put him in a different setting and it's not. Just something to ponder about.
Something to think about when it comes to the military and America, maybe. Which we did talk about last episode, because when he enters the courtroom, they frame Frank in front of the American flag.
Yeah.
One thing that I did get a text message from a friend of mine who listens to the show, and she was like, "Hey, I have a question about like subtext, because you guys talk a lot about how you make meaning out of like the different bits and parts that are happening here." She was like, "I didn't even notice the like American flag thing, and I just thought, well, it's a courtroom." And I was like, "I promise I'll explain on the show." So this is me explaining on the show. Something that is happening in this story, and in any text, to be completely honest, is, let's say, for example, that they didn't do that on purpose. Now, that shot, I think we can pretty confidently say is deliberate. Like, they frame him literally behind it. Let's say that was an accident. That just happened to be the shot that they got on the day, and the editor used it. Even if they didn't intentionally go in and decide, okay, we're going to put Frank, who's an ex-Marine, in front of this American flag before he goes into a courtroom, and then subsequently we hear testimony from his commanding officer when he was fighting in the war and murdering enemy combatants for America. Even if that was a coincidence and an accident, it still is present in the text and kind of reverberates off of everything else that's happening. And it's one of those like structural, there's both the structural detail of it happens at the start of the case as his character is questioned, and the first witness that they bring in is someone from the military. And then also both at like a thematic level where it's showing you that, then he's talking about, I want this guy to have a Medal of Honor. And then you and I, because I was thinking about this as you were talking, you and I go, it is okay and valorous to do this in a war setting in this mode of society, but in this other context where arguably, and this, not to get political, Pat, but arguably the criminals of Hell's Kitchen probably deserve it more than just the guys in some other country you don't like, right?
Mm-hmm.
The guys who were murdering people and doing this and the fifth thing, and of course we don't know in the imagination of Daredevil what the enemy combatants that Frank was fighting have done or would do, etc. Like we don't have that context, but I think it makes you think about that stuff. And makes you go, maybe war is bad. And that's a hot take.
Well, okay. So I think what maybe like a lot of people don't know is actually how much time and sort of human attention gets spent on making like media, like movies and TV shows. Yes, there are lots of scenarios where, especially I imagine that it is the case for something like this, like 13-hour-long episodes. It's a lot of shooting. It's a lot of pre-production, production, and post-production. But like, the smallest details have probably gone through at least like maybe 5 people, right? Like filtered in when it was written on a page, and then it's actually shot on the day. People are going like, like this would be cool symbolism. How can we frame this? And then in post-production and editing, the same people are still involved, looking at the order of the shots and going, this is interesting. Like, even if we didn't plan this, that has some interesting meaning to it. There is so much like thought going into like stuff like this.
Mm-hmm.
But It can be deliberate. It also can't. It also doesn't have to be deliberate. It's,
You make a very valid point there. I guess the way to say it without getting into like bots and stuff like that is text is, and like I'm not a big who's the phenomenology guy, Jean-Paul Sartre. I'm not a big Jean-Paul Sartre guy, but because like I don't find phenomenology to be particularly valuable as a method of like academic study. But what I would say is like text is a phenomenological object. It exists in time and space. It is a created object. Someone sat down and went, I'm going to write a novel about XYZ. And then they spent a bunch of time, resources. It went through an editor. It went through like beta readers. A publisher's checked it. Like there's all these big processes that go into it that create the object in time. And then that object you can then study and go, okay, how can I produce and infer meaning from like my emotional reactions to things? Or how can I put different parts of the text in conversation with itself to see if they generate things? There have been conversations we've had on this show already where we start down a line of thought and then we change our minds halfway through and go, maybe it's actually saying this, or maybe, it could be as simple as blah, blah, blah. So like even when you undertake those activities, it doesn't always produce meaning, and that's kind of the work, is finding where that is and putting those in conversation with each other, and trying to produce new meaning from what's there, rather than going, but was it intentional? Did the author intend it? You're completely right in like so many people touch these shows, and you can feel that the care and the craft, right? I don't know if this is just like if you're a creative person thing, but you can almost always tell when something has been done with a lot of care and attention and detail, versus something that might have less of that. Or maybe the way to say that is care and attention and detail in things that we as creatives and critics may value less in text. It's very easy to pick something that you resonate with and go, oh yeah, that's the kind of stuff that I pay attention to and I invest in my work. So let's put those in conversation with each other. If you want to see that across 9 months, just scroll back up in this feed and listen to the Sherlock podcast, where if you start end to end on that Sherlock podcast, Give Up After 3, you will come out of the other end basically with all of the knowledge from the beginning of high school English to the end of a master's degree in storytelling. It's pretty extensive as it evolves. I talk about bots for an hour and a half at one point. It's good. So that resource is there as well. But I promised I would explain it. So there you go.
It's a bold claim.
What's that?
That's a bold claim to the start of high school English.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, I mean, like the creative writing.
Keep the receipts on that.
Back at the apartment, Matt beats the crap out of Stick from seemingly nowhere and is like, "Hey, what's going on? Like, you need to be level with me here." And Stick tells sort of a fairy tale about immortality, and kind of positions it against Matt's Catholicism to get him to buy in, right? So he tells this fairy tale about this ancient order. There's an ancient order, the Hand, who are going around doing all kinds of bad stuff with the expressed kind of goal of working out immortality, and a single kid, seemingly begins to stop them, who's the Chaste, and Stick is sort of positioning himself as the Chaste. Whether this is like a literal story, whether it's like a parable, is unclear at this stage. But he also explains that they're hunting for the black sky, which is the same thing that I believe Stick was hunting for in the first season, the kid that he kills.
Yeah.
And I think it's notable that he uses the verb activate when referring to the black sky. Not saying like unleash, but activate specifically, I think is interesting verbiage.
Mm-hmm.
And this for me is the Stick's "let me tell you how the world really works" speech. And and he then reveals that Elektra works for him. Kind of long form revealing that he's tricked Matt into helping fire Elektra. And it also calls into question all of Matt's history with Elektra. When did this start? Which, like, because he says pretty like we learn later from Elektra, she's like, yeah, he sent me to like cozy up to you and keep you doing, try and convince you to cross the line and become one of us, and then I fell in love with you. And it's like, does he believe that? What does that mean for Matt's history? And it kind of calls into question every flashback we've seen so far, after Foggy and Nelson meet. Foggy and Nelson? What is wrong with me? Foggy and Matt.
You know what? I didn't really consider the disillusionment angle, but that checks out with what he like sort of goes through in the next 2 episodes. He's really distant, and what's that thing where you like what's that word where you don't like being around people, like a Philistine or something? It just becomes like a
not a Philistine, not a nihilist. It's in that realm though, isn't it? Editing David here. The word Patrick is thinking of is misanthrope, which describes a person who dislikes humankind, avoids human society, or generally shrugs away human interaction and vulnerability, which I think perfectly describes Matt Murdock in the wake of this news.
That gets explained pretty comprehensively about Elektra's motives, about Stick's motives, and about Elektra's side of the story, all throughout their relationship as well. Yeah,
it's quite a maneuver and it's the kind of maneuver that you go, oh, of course. It does. I think in a different show and conducted differently, you'd be like, ugh, that's a ridiculous twist. But here you go, oh no, another tragedy has befallen Matt Murdock once again. Yeah, don't trust history, kids.
It leads to like such interesting pathos for Elektra, mainly. Yeah, I feel like that reveal does more for Elektra than it does for Matt. It's so interesting how she's most interested in wanting Matt to be his best self, and that's something she kind of realized after she tried to pressure him into killing Roscoe Sweeney. She, it's one of her regrets, and she says, like, there's a light in you, and I try to snuff it out. And then we sort of learn that she loves him because he's the only person that believes she's good, and it's beautiful, man. It's beautiful pathos. I love it.
Matthew, there are things about me you don't know.
I don't need to know.
I want you to.
I don't care. Whatever you've done in the past. Elektra, whoever you've chosen to be, you're free now. All right? You could have killed those men at the hole, but you didn't. Because you're not Stick. And screw him for ever making you feel like you might be, even for a second.
He can hear you.
I don't care. When you were hurt, when I thought I might lose you, I felt hollow. Now, I have no reason to trust you. You've lied to me more times than I can count. But if you leave Stick, be with me. Fight this war by my side, my way. Our way.
Why are you so good?
I'm not.
There's a light inside you. I tried to snuff it out in college. I'm so lucky I failed.
Of course, undercut by the realization that their relationship was founded on a deception brought by Stick, right?
Yeah.
And yet, even so, Matt still believes there is good in her. And still believes fundamentally she is good. Matt is just like, for now, I should say, up until a certain event, remains he's just the most Catholic guy ever, where he constantly puts himself in positions of suffering, in order to remain to retain the possibility within himself to believe that everybody can be good, constantly, relentlessly, exhaustively, and he does it for everyone else around him to try and do the right thing. And the only people that seem to see some other aspect of what that means for him are Lantham and Foggy, I guess. But it's it's a really, you're right. It is quite a beautiful little moment, especially for a show that is quite dire, I would say.
Yeah. Just mentioned Lantham. Have we seen him at all this season?
He was at the funeral for the criminal they were protecting.
Yeah, you're right. That's right.
He's had a couple scenes, and he's pretty light on this season.
Yeah.
There's enough characters that I think he's warming the bench, Pat.
There are a lot of characters this season.
Yeah.
I think that's another aspect of why it seems a bit more cartoonish, is because you have so many characters, like Nobu, for example. Like, he's a cartoon villain.
Oh, yeah.
Which, I mean, but you can't really do anything more with him because, you know, he's just there to be the ninja villain. He's just there to be the boss, you know?
Just there to fling swords at you and speak bad Japanese.
That's it. Yeah, it gets a bit better, but yeah.
Does it? Okay.
Yeah.
That's good to know. Why? Okay. Patrick, I've written down here in my notes. Patrick, why does this story include Frank being shot in the head in the court case? What are we supposed to be thinking about? We get this right after Stick talks about immortality and raises Christ as coming back from the dead to try and persuade Matt that this is real. He is shot point blank in the head and survives the impossible, in some ways coming back from the dead.
Okay. Yep. Interesting.
What's going on? I just don't know what to make of this being included.
Yeah. It is interesting. I don't know. Honestly, I kind of think that maybe it's just like a really tenuous sort of like connection between the two plot lines that they just threw in there. Because, I mean, drawing like sort of Christ parallels to Frank, I don't know about that. Hey, like I don't really see much of. I don't see much Christly things about Frank. I mean, it makes sense for Matt, but not Frank.
I don't think there's a parallel. I just think it's noteworthy that they're talking about immortality, and here's a dude who survives death, right?
Yeah.
There's something there. There's something like I think you're right. It's not drawing the line, but they're in conversation with each other in some way.
Mm-hmm.
It's just I think the fact that the scenes are right next to each other made me go, is this something? And then I went, maybe this isn't something.
Well, the show does that a lot, where like it sort of, you know, the scenes rhyme with each other, like from different plot lines and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's a good
point.
point.
Sort of like get a cool kind of flow to the episode.
You know what? I think that's exactly what it is. I think structurally it gives you that nice pacing, that nice kind of rhythm, but also made me go, huh, that's interesting.
It's Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul does that a lot too.
Constantly. Mad Men's famous for doing this as well, where there'll be a scene with a bunch of characters, then the next scene will be a bunch of different characters doing the inverse of that scene. It's great. Frank pulls a, what if nothing changes if I kill the people that killed my family in this moment? And Karen's kind of like, this is one of those conversations where he and Karen, it's two characters having a conversation about something, but they're talking about completely different things. Frank is saying, what if I find who killed my family and it changes nothing for me? Frank is talking about the fact that Fisk has gotten to him, and Fisk has gotten to him in some way, and he's wondering if he should go through with being in prison, because if he's in prison, he can't go ahead and exact revenge on the people that killed his family. Karen is talking about the fact that, you know, Frank has this path of redemption, this possibility of coming back, and is trying to validate her belief that he is like fundamentally good, and that what she saw in him, this kind of that he has a code, she's trying to verify that that's true and trying to remind him of that. And it's such an artful. I mean, both of these actors are brilliant, and their chemistry is absolutely brilliant. But I also like the way that the script works in that way. It's a really great little sequence of dialogue. I might even drop it in. I don't know. It's great.
Okay, yeah, I didn't realize that came after the bit where the guard sort of says that thing to him.
No, we don't know that yet.
Oh, we don't? What? Right. So that what Frank is talking about, do we retroactively recontextualize that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah,
right,
I only realized that when I was going back through watching it. I sometimes will skim when I'm making notes. And yeah, I noticed that because it's literally the day before he's about to do what he does.
Yeah. Okay.
Temporal
That's
relation
cool.
there puts that pretty clear. It's good. Yeah, very good dialogue. You might hear it just here. It depends how the editing goes.
Yeah, I guess we need that, right? We need to get away sometimes.
I went up into the kids' bedrooms. There were drawings on the walls and sports trophies on the dressers.
I was gone a lot, so I missed a lot of that.
There were toys scattered all over the ground. A lot of plastic dinosaurs.
Yeah, those were my little girls, those were Lisa's. But she was little, she used to make these little noises when she played with them.
What about the little car? Like a remote-controlled Jeep.
Yeah, it's Frank Jr.'s. I got that for him for his 7th birthday. He used to... Yeah. Drove me crazy with that thing.
Actually, maybe let's finish up this day in the story, and then if there's anything we need to go back to, we can, and then we can kind of talk about the courtroom. So Foggy and Karen are having this conversation. Karen's like, what if Matt doesn't show? What if Matt doesn't show up? And Foggy's like, well, I need him for this. And Karen sort of thinks it's coming from a place of self-doubt. And Foggy says, quote, Matt and I are partners for a reason. There's some things I'm better at, and there's things he's better at. This is something he'll be better at. End quote. Foggy, I still love the aspect of these relationships in that, last season, you said that there's this compelling underlying reason why they're partners. And this is another one of those moments where you go, yeah, these guys are in this relationship with each other in both the work capacity and as friends for a reason. There are things that they're both good at, and they recognize that in each other, and they value that in each other.
It is. It's a cool, sober, pragmatic bit of wisdom from Foggy. He's like, no, that's not what I'm talking about, Karen. Like, he will be better at this. I will be better at this. That's just, and we need to win this case. Yeah, it is cool.
Ironic with what's to come. Spoilers. Matt is not better at this.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Okay, back at the apartment, because that's still the same day. Elektra explains that, she was there for the mission, then she fell in love. I don't know how much I believe her. Matt seems to believe her, but that's neither here nor there. Doesn't really matter that whether or not she fell in love. It's yet another part of his life he's not in control of. This is where I started to think about what I was describing before about the ways in which this recontextualizes a lot of his life. And this also places it in context with him not... He says to Elektra, you should join me, but you can't kill, no killing. You need to... I still believe that it's good news. It's the conversation we were alluding to before. And for my worth, I think it's also... A, it's his rule, right? It's the Batman rule. We get it. But B, I think it's also him trying to exert any control over his life whatsoever in this moment where he just has no control over anything. Everything is spiraling out of control, and he's like, there's one thing I can control.
Yeah.
Do you think... Question for Pat. Do you think this is also Is this a romantic invitation as well? Is when he says "stay with me," is this?
I mean, yeah, kind of. I think it's like unspoken, like unspoken, and maybe even like sort of not consciously thought of, but
Yeah.
it has that effect, doesn't it? Like, the day after your life goes to shit, you still, you haven't processed it. You're still wondering, like, is my life actually gone to shit? And then, it takes some time for that realization to kick in. So I think, yeah, this is like a case of like, he's pretty sure that everything is ruined, all his relationships are ruined. And so he's like, fuck it.
Going back to his ex, his toxic
Yeah.
ex.
Yeah, essentially, yeah.
Yeah. Hey, Matt, this isn't a good relationship, by the way. This isn't going to be good for you.
What are you talking about? It's
just something about it.
a murderer and a Catholic.
Yeah.
Match made in heaven.
Exactly right. I was saying this, I don't know which episode, but if you've ever been in this type of relationship and you go back into that relationship after splitting up, it's very quick that you go, oh, well, this is clearly a mistake. I feel like Matt has that almost immediately.
Yeah.
When she kills that dude.
It is pretty funny how immediately it changes as well. He's like,
it's been a day.
Yeah. Well, dude, it happened like overnight.
Yeah. It's so quick. This chick, not good for you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's talk. Do you have anything else before we talk about the courtroom and then I guess how this wraps up?
Nope. Let's go for it.
All right. So Matt shows up to court the next morning as requested and instantly gets fobbed off by Karen. It's great. What's interesting to me is because she doesn't know that he's Daredevil. He's about to walk past her and she flags for him that she's there. And then fobs him off.
Are you sure you're thinking of the right scene?
No, I'm not. Is that different?
Yeah, in the third episode of this bunch we're doing, he's walking up the stairs to go meet Reyes, and then that's when Karen sort of like,
okay,
yeah,
then ignore me.
I'm pretty sure because it's the day after, Karen sort of sees Elektra in his bed, and then he walks up to the stand and he tries to talk to her, and she just brushes him off. She goes, "Oh, Foggy wants to talk to you."
Yeah, that's right. Okay.
Yeah.
Put a pin in that for later. I've written down here, they put Frank in a suit and he looks better than any person has ever looked in a suit in their entire life. John Marenthal's such a good looking dude. And this moment, he's given James Bond for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's a good looking guy. They put him in a good suit.
Someone else gave me James Bond vibes. Was it in one of these episodes? I can't remember. Oh yeah, Nobu. When he was like in the third episode, a bit of a tangent, but like when he's going down the elevator, he's also wearing a suit.
Yeah.
I was like, dude, got some James Bond vibes, yeah.
There you go. 2 actors who could be the next James Bond. There you go.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously it should be Emily Blunt, but I'm biased. I just think she'd be a great James. I don't know. I'm sorry to be that guy. Or Idris Elba, obviously. He might be too old now, though. I don't know if he'd want to do it. It's a lot of commitment.
Yeah.
I mean, Daniel Craig was too old. He still did it. And he seems to hate it, which is still funny to me. All right, let's talk about Matt's speech. So Matt immediately fucks this up. Like, he just doesn't come to Frank with the right energy. Frank isn't really engaging with him. And so Matt's like, permission to treat the witness as hostile, which I've seen so many police procedurals and shows that involve courts. I still have no idea what that means. Like, because then Matt just does a monologue. He doesn't actually really ask him anything. I have no idea what asking a witness to treat the witness as hostile. I don't know what that means functionally.
I think it's like, I thought it was like they restrain him or something.
I don't know.
But as soon as he says that, he just like kind of walks up to him.
Yeah.
I was like, bro, isn't that like the opposite of treating him as hostiles? I have no idea.
I'm looking it up, right? We're doing it real time. Wikipedia. A hostile witness, also known as an adverse witness or an unfavorable witness, is a witness at a trial whose testimony or direct examination is openly attacked. Yeah, we know that. But what happens? A witness is presumed to be hostile. Tony's going to influence a hostile's witness's it doesn't tell me what it means. I don't know what that means. Leading questions either suggest the answer or challenge the witness's testimony. Okay, so basically lets you do what Matt did. You can just kind of like assume that they're not going to tell the truth or that they're trying to undermine your questions of them.
Right. Yeah.
And so Matt asks a big leading question. And he basically, he kind of, I put this in the summary. I snuck it in there as some speculation, as I want to do, which is that Matt kind of replicates. I went back because I've been editing this season as we've been recording it. I just inserted the clip on the rooftop where Frank is sort of saying, the city needs men like me, men willing to do what's necessary. Matt just reproduces it almost word for word in some little sequences here. It's fucking fascinating. And it's this direct refrain of the conversation he had with Elektra, which is he's taking Frank's speech and he's refactoring it to be about Daredevil and why he puts on the mask and why the city needs heroes that are willing to do the right thing. And it's such a cool little combinatory thing happening where he's taking the Elektra stuff and he's putting it on top of Frank's speech and warping it and like laundering Frank's speech to be about the stuff he was trying to explain to Elektra. But he's basically self-justifying being Daredevil, right? That's what this speech is doing, but laundered through the kind of frame of the Punisher. It's such a... This show rules. When he started doing it, and he finished, I paused the scene and I was like, God damn, it's crazy. It's crazy. The show is crazy good.
I love how it's kind of gives the sense that Matt's in like a lot of emotional turmoil, you know, and him giving the speech is kind of a loss of judgment on his part. Like he's just sort of, you know, like giving away his actual true opinions and his feelings that, you know, he usually says the opposite of to try and like, you know, be a cool, mysterious guy.
Interesting. And he completely beefs the approach as well. Do you remember what the plan was? I don't remember at this point.
So he was meant to connect the dots between the testimony of the coroner and yeah, Frank's memory of what happened at the carousel that day.
Right. Oh, yeah. Sure. Okay. Yeah. Right. To paint him as sort of sympathetic in some sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, got it. And then instead he just goes off like this and blows the well, this might have been recoverable if Frank didn't do this big kind of like explosive affect where he just sort of puts on the performance of a lifetime and he's ranting and he's raving and he's hooting and he's hollering about how he's the Punisher and he did it all and he'd do it again. And I'm the Punisher, baby. It's quite the performance for me. And this, you know, this moment signals Matt's entire life basically like imploding. All of the good things that we saw built up when we locked Punisher away, and when he and Karen were about to get together, and when the law firm was going really well, and they'd outmaneuvered Reyes and all of that stuff. Every single one of those things has now been undone and completely blown up in his face. And, you know, pretty unceremoniously, immediately afterwards, Karen dumps Matt, and, you know, Elektra makes this choice to stay. And I've written down here, these are a lot of red flags at once. And do you think that Matt lies when he says he's glad that they lost the case?
Yeah, I think to some degree. Well, actually, yeah, I think to some degree he's also telling the truth. I think he says he's glad that he lost the case because in the coming episodes he starts to, you know, accrue this feeling that him and Daredevil are the same person. Like there's no distinction between them. And him losing the case, you know, absolves him of the last bit of responsibility he has to his lawyer life.
Right.
Now,
yeah. Okay. Yeah. So he means he's relieved.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting. Damn. I mean, I hadn't really thought about that. Yeah. And because this is really the last piece of Matt Murdock is Foggy and wow, is Nelson and Murdock. I don't know what's happening with my brain, but I've got Foggy and Nelson stuck in the craw for some reason.
Yeah, your brain's all foggied up.
Oh, very good, Pat. Very good.
Yeah.
That was the one joke of the season. He's done it, ladies and gentlemen. Do you want to? Okay, we'll talk about the ending here, and then we'll take a quick break. Elektra immediately. We said it in the summary, but this kid ninja comes in, seemingly out of nowhere. Matt defeats him pretty tidily, and then Elektra, out of frame, steps in and just cuts his throat.
Yeah.
And she's
It's so
covered in
great.
blood. She's covered in blood. And she's like, you know, do you still want me or what? I don't remember exactly what she says. And
Yeah,
I've
she says that.
yeah, I've written down in all caps, Elektra immediately cuts this kid's throat. What the fuck? Like, immediately. Like, she just said she wanted to be with him and then does a big time murder? So clearly I was having a reaction to this. It's so well shot, that little sequence. It's great.
Yeah, her performance is so good. So, like, this kind of like, it's almost like a kind of childlike desperation.
Yeah.
And she's like covered in this guy's blood. She's holding a knife. She's like, "Do you still want me?" And then Matt's just like freaking out. He's like, "What the fuck?" It's so shocking. It's yeah. Just after she said, she was like, "Yeah, I'm down with the morality stuff. Sure."
And like you said before, this is him getting back with his toxic ex. And then, like I was saying, it immediately breaks bad, like instantly.
Yeah.
Because don't get back with your toxic ex. That's rule number 1. Okay.
But she's so hot though, Dave.
And she's a ninja. Like, what are you gonna do? She's
I'm
a hot ninja.
only human.
I'm only human. I'm fallible too. I dated the hot ninja, and she wants to get back with me. What am I supposed to do? I also think, it's impressive. It's impressive how instantly she realizes she can't change, and it's just, yeah, this is who I am. Deal with it. It's great. A real who's who of two people in a relationship who are so incompatible and incapable of change, yet insist on trying to be together. Good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Then we get the thing that we talked about at the start, which I don't think we need to labor on because we've sort of got through most of our ideas there. But, Frank goes into prison and is sort of immediately... I've seen enough TV shows to know how prison works, or at least how Hollywood imagines prison works, to know that this is not the normal process the second it starts to change. And yeah, he gets uncuffed and he goes to the rec room and Fisk is back. Getting ripped, getting swole, getting big.
Yeah.
He's a scary dude. It comes out of, we said before, it comes out of nowhere. It's an excellent little reveal. They don't talk in this episode, do they? They just they have like one or two lines, or do they speak at all?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
No, he says, "I see you got my message."
That's a good Fisk.
It is.
You've got a
you,
good
my
Fisk impression. Yeah.
Oh, nice. Thank you.
I didn't know that you had that on in the Batman utility belt.
I didn't either. I have a few impressions like that, which I just pull out every now and again. And apparently they're good.
Yeah, damn.
I did a really good what's his name? Who's the guy that Scorsese always works with? The old dude.
Robert De Niro?
Yeah. I did a really, really good impression of him once, and Mitchie was very, very impressed.
Oh, okay. You know what? That sounds like Mitchie.
Mm-hmm.
Gives into astonishment. Not me, ladies and gentlemen. I simply recognize the value of the craft and we move on. I've never given into astonishment once, and there's no evidence of me doing that over 10 years.
Yep.
All right, let's take a quick break where you'll probably hear an ad for this very t-shirt. And we'll be right back talking about Season 2, Episode 9, which is called 7 Minutes in Heaven. All right, we'll see you then. If you enjoy what we do, the best way to support us is to head to UnderInk.Press and grab a t-shirt. We have the Daredevil in the Details branded pocket tee. We've got some Maynard Treek shirts that have got kind of different phrases from each book that are really cool. You can head to UnderInk.Press, grab a t-shirt. It helps support what we do. You get some cool fashion threads, and these are sustainable heavyweight fabric. They're designed to last 10, 20 years. This is a t-shirt that you're going to buy and you're going to be able to wear for a very long time. You can head to UnderInk.Press to help support us. Otherwise, consider giving us a rating or review on your podcast catcher or platform of choice. Thanks so much. Welcome back. Let's talk about Season 2, Episode 9, 7 Minutes in Heaven. This is written by Marco Ramirez and Lauren Schmidt-Hisrick and directed by Steven Surgic. Pat, could we please hear the summary?
In the then, Fisk is incarcerated. Before he can gain his bearings in prison, Dutton, the self-proclaimed kingpin of the prison, threatens Fisk. The Wilson we know and love goes to work manipulating the people and systems around him to build up his power in prison, then makes his play, bringing Frank Castle into prison with designs to assassinate Dutton. In the now, Matt recovers from being shot with a poison arrow while cleaners remove any trace of the ninja's death. In a quiet exchange, he tells Elektra they cannot keep corrupting each other. In prison, Wilson offers Frank a deal. Press Dutton for info, then off him. He was the broker who facilitated the death of Frank's family. Elsewhere, Foggy and Nelson... You did it again! Elsewhere.
Fucking hell.
That's
Jesus. Good. There you go.
Elsewhere, Murdock and Nelson break up the firm for good. Meanwhile, Karen heads to the bulletin to share her lead about the missing body she discovered during the castle trial. This takes her to the ME who hid the body, who reveals that the dead John Doe was an undercover cop. In prison, Frank confronts Dutton, learns his family died during a sting operation on a drug dealer named the Blacksmith. After slaying Dutton, Frank carves his way through Dutton's cronies. Fisk lets Frank out of prison with a prophetic hope that the Punisher will track down those who killed his family. Daredevil zeroes in on an accountant working for the Hand, a mirror of the weak link in Fisk's operation, the Money Man from Season 1. This brings Daredevil to the farm, where he is confronted by the slain Nobu, risen from the grave and more lethal than ever.
I think what's happened is the more effort I've put into making the intros as poetic as possible has inhibited my ability to spot the typos. I think it's like the cooler I make them, the less I'm able to, see the trees for the forest, Pat. I'm looking at the forest and I'm looking at the trees.
The more fast and loose you play it, the more fast and loose it ends up being.
That's right. And that's, you know what? That's storytelling, gang. That's
it's poetry for you.
That's poetry, baby. We start this episode with a flashback to Fisk's incarceration. It's really cool because for me, like, I thought I had worked out the show's priorities, and then they do like a 180, like this moment, and I'm like, whoa, okay. This season's not about the stuff I thought it was about. It's about a whole bunch of other stuff as well.
Yeah, it is weird they keep introducing shit. Yeah, and they just like focus on Wilson Fisk. It's quite strange. And like it shows like just so much process, which is what I love.
It's our favorite thing.
Yeah.
It also creates space between what happened last episode and when we next pick up the story. I think you need a bit of that space after the shock of what happens with Elektra, right?
Yeah.
A notable detail I've written down here is that Fisk doesn't get heckled on his way into his cell, or at least they don't show it. And then we cut to him in his cell staring at the wall, which is obviously putting itself in conversation with Rabbit in a snowstorm and all of the different ideas the show has about Fisk and his traumas and all those kinds of things. Does Dutton come in immediately, or have I got that wrong?
Yeah, no, I think he does. He comes in pretty quickly. And I love what he says to him. He says, because, he's pretty much saying to him, I'm the kingpin of
I know
this
who
bitch.
you are. Yeah.
Yeah, and he says, you ain't ever seen a throne you don't want to sit in, which is like a really cool bit of insight into Fisk's character. Like we were talking about last season about like, what is his motivation exactly? And you sort of rightly pointed out that it probably has a lot to do with his dad, and how his dad was kind of like a hapless but ambitious kind of guy. And Wilson Fisk is very competent and ambitious.
Yeah, and he's doing everything he can to not be like that.
Yeah.
His dad was the guy who could never become mayor. His dad never won in the way that he was trying to. And Fisk is the guy who refuses to ever lose.
Mm-hmm.
It's that kind of like reactive, inherited trauma in a lot of ways. The other thing, and I think does Dutton say this to Fisk, or does Fisk say it to Dutton? I've got the quote here, which is, "The man who casts a shadow in the dark."
Yeah.
Such a good line.
That is a great line.
I think it's Dutton describing Fisk, maybe.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I went, God damn it. I wish I'd written that. That's one of those type of lines of dialogue. And it gives you such a... I've spoken about this before, but I want to dote on it for a second, which is the ways in which characters believe things about each other in a story, and whether or not those things are true is where you get the real kind of like... That's like this subliminal kind of... I was going to say world building, but it's really more like expositional character... Like kind of character building, character work, relationship positioning. This idea that Dutton, a guy who is in charge of this prison from the inside, says, you know, you're the man who casts a shadow in the dark. He's like laying a lot of respect on Fisk in this moment and recognizing like, you're someone who could go toe to toe with me, so I'm trying to get ahead of it. And it tells you a lot about how the rest of the criminal element imagines and understands Fisk, right? In the same way that in The Dark Knight, for example, the mob and the criminals think the Joker is a lunatic and they don't want to work with him, and like he's positioned as an outsider, and the way that they talk about and believe him tells you a lot about their position and perception and what we see in our understanding of him. And the difference between the two is how we understand the characterization of both the mob and the Joker. And this is one of those similar moments for me, where this understanding from Dutton is so different than the understanding that we had in season 1 from our protagonists, from Nelson and Murdock, Karen, like all of the goodies, as it were. And even the other criminal element, you know, he's kind of saying like, you're this kind of like the man who casts a shadow in the dark. Like, what does that mean? Well, it's you know, you cast a shadow when you're standing over something, or when there's like a light source behind you. And Fisk is so formidable that he kind of casts his presence over everything, even when you don't know what's happening. Even when it's invisible, he still has that shadow that's casting out and reaching out.
He's a dark in the darkness.
Yeah. You know, and this guy seemingly, I think there's a possible version of reality where he doesn't do this, and Fisk doesn't realize there's a kingpin and a throne, and goes about his business in prison a different type of way. But this guy immediately telling him there's a throne to sit in is what Fisk, he signs his death warrant in this moment, basically. Because Fisk will stop at nothing, like he correctly asserts, to, there's no throne he doesn't want to sit on. Dutton not killing him is such a mistake here, but then I guess that's that respect thing, right? You know, you don't do that to someone who's as formidable as you are.
Yeah. But it is a mistake because it gives Fisk immediately an objective. And he gets to work straight away. Wastes no time.
What's cool is we know it works because we saw him in the previous episode in control.
Yeah, true.
It's so good.
And yeah, it's awesome to see how he gets that control too.
The process of it, right?
Yeah. It's so, I don't know, like, I feel like, again, another show would just not really bother showing that. Like, another show would just be like, no, you have to assume that he is talented and formidable enough to create influence in this prison. You don't need to know how. It's a waste of time. You don't need to know how.
Right.
But I mean, yeah, I don't know. Like, you probably could do without it, but it's just so interesting to see. I don't really know why though.
I think it's just impressive in how captivating it is being extant material. Like you could cut this out and nothing in the story would change.
Yeah.
But it's so there's also just something about watching Fisk do criminal stuff.
Yeah.
You just can't look away. Like, he's so compelling. The acting is next level. It's the other part here, you know.
Yeah. I think maybe it is a bit informative in that it's a bit of a microcosm of how he gained power just regularly, just on the outside, which is through money.
It's not just money, though.
Isn't it, though? Like, he pays off those two guys' mum's rent, and then he pays for a retainer for that other guy's brother or something. He buys them off, essentially.
I think it's also how he uses the money. Like, there's something very uncrude and eloquent about the ways in which he decides to leverage he doesn't, you know, he pays off this guy's mum's rent. He doesn't, you know, give him money so he can buy blow in prison or whatever. Like, do you know what I mean? There's an eloquence to it that generates respect along with leverage.
Yeah, and I guess it's quite deliberate that it's that one particular guy who comes up and talks to Fisk, who's like, you know, like not a very thuggish individual.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, you know, Fisk kind of treats them like they're his homies. And he gets their respect and their trust. Yeah, it is interesting. It's probably how he recruited Wesley.
Almost certainly. Yeah. I did think, oh, he's got a couple of Wesleys. I also love the tension between him and his lawyer / the dude that works for him. Where he's like,
that guy is so great.
He's like, you're running out of money, bro. Like, what do you do? He's like, keep your fucking nose clean. And then the first time he sees him, Fisk is like, hey, I need you to do something. Yeah. And he's like, what do you do? I gave you specific instructions. And Fisk, you know, knowing better, goes about his business anyway. He's a fun guy. It's a fun relationship. And just how increasingly frustrated he is that this is just happening to him.
Oh, what, Donovan?
Yeah.
It's
it's very entertaining to watch. I don't know what this is. This must be Matt recovering, but I've written here, these poison ninja tools are definitely against the Geneva Convention, right?
Poison against the Geneva Convention?
I think so. You know, not knowing the Geneva Convention too well, I couldn't say for sure.
But, probably like poison in vapor or some sort of biological gas. That's probably against it. But
that's definitely chemical weapons.
Poison.
Definitely regular poison's fine, is it?
If you can get close enough to the enemy to slip some poison in their burger, you know, it's probably allowed.
You think? Oh yeah, it's like a game respect game type thing.
Yeah.
If you got, it's like if you can do a hitman to someone, you get that's not against the Geneva Convention. If it requires large scale chemical weapons, that's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just morality, you know.
Yeah.
Ethics. We worked it out. Elektra, in the next, so you know, he's recovering. She brushes off the murder pretty quickly, and it paints.
I love this line.
Yeah, go for it.
I love this line where she's like, I killed him. Matt goes, you killed him. She goes, yeah, but it was in self-defense. He was gonna, you know, bring his big brother back to us. Even your precious court of law would say that's legitimate. It's such an interesting line, man.
Isn't it?
Like she sees morality as like an abstract sort of concept. It doesn't. She genuinely doesn't understand what it's for, like morality, and because she has like a disposition to violence, you know, and she's, you know, she's the but like you could sort of, you could also is that is that not revealed yet? Sorry,
it's fine, I'll bleep it.
But it's very explainable from just saying that she has like psychopathic tendencies or sociopathic, I'm not too sure. But you know, that is a thing, like not genuinely not understanding like the like harm and suffering you cause to others and stuff like that.
Do you think that's positional with Stick, where he just doesn't care? Like he understands but he doesn't care? Or do you think Stick is similar?
No, I'd say Stick is similar. I'd say he's similar to Elektra in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like a different language to them almost, which is why and that's how she misuses it here, because she doesn't understand it.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that this put in mind for me is there's a way in which Elektra in this show can she's also like the heiress to like $1 billion empire or whatever, right? Like she's super well off and things like that. There's a component to it where like, yeah, you wouldn't really understand morality and how regular people view the world baseline. And so you have to go, it's this nurture or nature kind of question. And for me, like, it's kind of probably implicitly both, but it seems to mostly be nurture both from the fact that she was born rich and then also obviously Stick's intervention at a very young age.
Mm-hmm.
Her formative teens to early 20s, she's training with Stick. Doesn't have Matt's moral compass or his wishy-washy god shit, and is rich and has never really been, in a position to relate to other people properly. It's like the perfect storm.
She says she killed someone when she was 12 just because she wanted to.
Oh.
Which is the age that Matt got blinded, so,
Oh, damn, Daredevil. I didn't even pick up on that. That's harrowing as fuck.
I know, right?
Just so that she knew what it would feel like, right? Or did she say it felt good? I can't remember. Or does Matt?
Yeah, I think.
That?
Yeah. He says it for her that like he liked it, and she doesn't deny it. So yeah,
there's something really tragic about the fact that Matt still loves her despite all of this, and he's like, "Hey, we need to stop. Like, we need to stop corrupting each other." And he's using that obviously in both directions, right? Like. He's in being with him, she is corrupting the foundation of who she is, and in him being with her, he's doing the same.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was saying before, they're just fundamentally incompatible.
Yeah.
The next scene is great, where Fisk does his gambit, right? So he's saying to Frank, "Hey, this is what I need from you," and Frank says in response immediately, "I don't need help from has-been shitbag mob bosses."
and then Fisk is like, "Has been."
It's
like
so
that's
good.
what he gets upset about.
I know. Fuck it. Frank does not put any respect on this man at any stage. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
And because he wouldn't. And it's so telling that he and Daredevil have that connection and they have that respect for each other by the end of, how things go down. In contrast with Fisk, who just assumes that because of his position and his influence and his wealth that Frank will respect him and go along with this.
Mm-hmm.
It's great.
It's interesting how Frank doesn't have much like vitriol toward Wilson Fisk, because he's just, he has just a general distaste for him, because Frank isn't one of those vulnerable people in New York that could have been used by someone like Fisk. He was a military, he was a soldier. He had a comfortable life, middle class life with his family.
He's also a smart guy too. Like, he's very tuned into what's happening around him. He's not going to get taken for a ride, kind of thing. Yeah,
but it's interesting how it's not very personal to Frank. But it's just that he's a mob boss, and he's just a shitbag mob boss, like Frank says.
It's a general distaste as opposed to like a personal one.
Yeah, the reason he doesn't help him is because of some vague sort of morals.
I suppose also conceivably, if Fisk hadn't been in prison, he's the type of guy that Frank would have gone after to kill.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I don't think that's true. Because Frank has no skin in Wilson's game. I think there is a sort of a difference in between Wilson Fisk's organized crime and the sort of more brutish, like out in the open crime that the Dogs of Hell and the Irish and the other group have been doing. To me, there was a clear distinction when Frank said that line. Like it wasn't personal. It was just more of a thing that, like, I'm not going to help you because you're a mob boss, but otherwise I don't care.
Right. That's so interesting. I hadn't even thought of that. I suppose that also brings to mind the. But that's also kind of Fisk's design. Like that's the design of the type of operation he, and that's what Matt sees through in season 1, and Karen sees through, and Nelson and Murdock see through, and Ben sees through, is he just doesn't seem like every other criminal. Like aesthetically, the way that he like everything about it seems different, but he's hurting probably more people than anyone else, more insidiously, but people just don't see it. And so I think that's really noteworthy to me, because the fact that Frank does have that kind of I would say almost like disinterested distaste speaks to the fact that like even now Fisk has retained the thing that makes him work as a criminal.
That's the reason why Fisk is pretty confident that he's going to go after Dutton and not like go after Fisk. It's because Dutton is very close to this, Frank's situation. While Fisk is like, who the fuck is he? Like, he's never been involved in Frank's life at all.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. Damn. That's a very cool pickup. I like that a lot. I think something else noteworthy with this scene is that Fisk misapprehends Frank a little here. I think a lot of people and the show is a lot of characters in the show, and Fisk himself, and people who readers of the story view Fisk as this like ultimate manipulator. But in some ways, to me, Frank is so literal that I don't think he can be manipulated.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's sort of in a like, Fisk tries to manipulate him into doing this, and Frank is just in a pragmatic, what other fucking choice do I have moment. Like, he's not interested in any of the trappings and the this, that, and the pretty words. He can't be manipulated, because like the only way that this works as a manipulation is at a structural level. You can't talk him into doing something. You have to force him into it, give him no other choice. That's kind of what happens here.
Well, yeah, you just have to give him the straight facts.
Yes.
Which is in that initial scene when they meet in the gym. I don't know, Fisk is just using some flowery language, and then all Frank wants to know is, I want a name. Give me a name.
Yeah, he's like, just tell me what's up. Stop beating around the bush.
Yeah.
And I think that's a beat that Fisk misses at times. He's so wrapped up in the theater of his self-performance that he just completely misses that as a skill worth developing. Because he doesn't have like a middle ground. There's like big talky, speechy performance Fisk, and then there's animal beat your head off with a door Fisk. There's no everyman Fisk that can talk to someone like Frank.
But then the beat your head off with the door Fisk, like, it's funny that's where he meets Frank at, like, like emotionally afterwards. Yeah. And
that's
they
true.
Sort of find some sort of like common ground. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a really good point. Do you want to, I know it's jumping ahead, but do you want to explain that scene? Because I think that's it. There's a good point to talk about it.
Yeah. So after Frank kills Dutton and sort of Fisk betrays Frank is taken into, some sort of like solitary confinement, and he's all locked up. And then Wilson Fisk goes to see him, and Frank expects, he's kind of expected for Fisk to kill him. And he goes, why am I still alive? And Fisk explains that he sort of, after witnessing the absolute carnage of Frank just tearing up a hallway of inmates, that he's more useful alive. And then they get into a bit of a tiff. And yeah, it's mostly one way, because Frank's doing his best. He's locked up. He gets a few hits in, then Wilson just wails on him. And then Wilson unlocks, or orders the guards to unlock Frank's cuffs, and they sort of have like they meet on an even ground, and Wilson explains that yeah, look, I'm going to let you go so that you can cause chaos, so that you can leave the New York City playground open when I eventually get back.
And it's it's such an interesting scene because the fight is like a conversation in some ways, where it's sort of, it's kind of this like, I mean, to be completely honest, Frank hasn't come across anyone who can stand up to him in open hand-to-hand combat, really.
Yeah.
Or just combat, like, he's just an unstoppable machine of a guy. And Fisk is one of the few people that can meet, you know, Fisk is the unstoppable object to the unstoppable object to the no, the other way around.
Unstoppable force in a movable object.
Yeah, my brain is cooked, mate.
You can't do the pairs tonight.
The pairing is tricky.
Yeah.
God forbid I need to do a list or a triplet. But yeah, it has this interesting kind of effect for them as people, where I think Fisk is so confident that Frank won't come after him because, like we said before in that initial scene, Fisk and him, there's he's got no stakes in coming after Fisk, but also after doing that, I think he's won some of Frank's grudging respect. It's not respect yet, but it's like at least they're equals in some capacity in a way that no one else has been so far for Frank.
Mm-hmm.
It's quite a maneuver.
Yeah.
Again, Master Manipulator realizes he made a mistake, comes back for a second chance, and fucking nails it.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is what makes him stand out. Which is maybe why Frank gives him respect, is because he isn't like, you know, just other criminal mob bosses. He's quite intelligent. He's quite crafty. You know, he's adaptable, which is
and he seems to have
quality.
He seems to have a code of some description.
Yeah.
We don't really understand what that is fully, but he does have some kind of code, which I think Frank picks up on and seems to respect. And again, that's the thing that Karen respected in Frank too. Yeah, all of that's kind of orbiting each other, and we'll come to a bit of a climax as the season kind of ramps up. The next thing that happens is Foggy comes to Matt's apartment, and they have the weirdest exchange, because it's unclear what Foggy expected to happen. Matt is in a really bad place because he's reeling from this Elektra stuff, and his entire life is basically over. And it's such a weird, like, just the vibes have never been more off than they are in this moment, in this conversation. And I have nothing else to say other than it's a stilted, awkward, weird, charged moment, but that's what it's trying to do, and it fucking nails it, kills it.
Yeah, it's interesting how Foggy goes there to not necessarily to break off their relationship. In fact, he kind of wants to salvage it, and then Matt's the one that sort of deliberately goes like, "No, it's over." Like, you know, yeah, cut all ties.
Yeah, that's it. We're done. Damn. If that's how it be, that's how it be. Sometimes you gotta break up with a friend, guys. Okay. Sometimes you gotta break up with your only friend. All right.
When their vigilantism gets in the way of your professional, work life. Oh, tell me about it.
That's what'll eventually end our relationship. Is Pat's vigilantism.
Don't tell him.
Shit, sorry. Hey, guys, be cool. Don't tell anyone. We then get a weirdly candid conversation between Karen and Foggy. And I think Foggy overplays himself a little in some sense, and then Karen pushes back. I don't remember the exact context of what they're talking about because I watched this nearly a month ago due to some production stuff, but Karen takes the lead that they had about the hidden body to the paper, and it's after this conversation with Foggy that we start to imagine for Karen a life after Nelson and Murdock. She hasn't realized it yet, obviously. But this is where we start to go, oh, maybe there's like something beyond, this thing with Nelson and Murdock. But yeah, I mean, again, all nice little slick plot stuff happening, really good character positioning for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's it is pretty interesting how, you know, there's that bit where Foggy's packing up the office and the last line he says is, I think we should start looking for a life outside this office. And they do. Like that, they never go back on that. Like that you know, that's what happens. Karen goes and finds another job, and it's just like, it's almost like real life or something, you know, like, yeah, it's, things end and then people move on, and it's like kind of sobering. And
he's also talking about Matt, right?
Well, yeah, he's just talking about the general situation, which Matt is a pretty big part of, yeah.
Especially for Karen, who was in that romantic, you know, relationship, right?
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate. Show's just full of just nice tragedy, you know? Just
it's juicy.
Roads never taken is the definition here. Leaves you it leaves you always wanting things to go a slightly different way. You know what I mean? I've talked about this before in the context of Star Wars. One of my favorite things ever is the scene where Anakin comes into the room during Revenge of the Sith where Mace Windu has Darth Sidious on the ropes. And it's Hayden Christensen's acting and it's the script. And every single time he walks in and Darth Sidious, you know, appeals to him, every single time I believe that Anakin will make a different choice, and he never does. And it's such a well choreographed piece of tragedy. Obviously in the larger context of the film and the prequels, but like in that moment, every single time, it's so well done and so well acted that I'm like, maybe this time when I watch it, he'll do the right thing and things will go differently. And I feel like these 3 episodes for me are Matt's version of that in this story.
Yeah.
You keep going, just tell Elektra to leave, ditch the hand, and go tell Karen that you love her and be with the woman you're supposed to be with. What are we doing? Every single time.
Yeah. But also, it's like, seems pretty inevitable.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
But that's part of really good storytelling is when things resolve, they're surprising yet inevitable. Damn.
Yeah.
Put that on a t-shirt. Okay, what have we got? So then, kind of ramping up toward the end of this episode, we learn that we've already said the stuff about, in the summary, Frank's family was killed during a sting by the police. And Frank goes in, so he goes in and he confronts Dutton, and this is, you know, Dutton tells him this. And then Frank kills every one of Dutton's men, it seems like, and also Dutton. It's gnarly as shit, candidly.
Yeah.
It's a gnarly fucking action sequence.
It is. It's like, it's kind of one of the best action sequences of the show, I think. For some reason, it's just John Bernthal. He's the way he moves.
His physicality.
Like an action figure that doesn't have many joints. He's just, you know, there's just this brick shit house just fucking up a room full of dudes. It's so good to watch.
He's inflexible, and he feels like every time that he does something, it feels like a coil, like uncoiling and erupting. Like there's a velocity to everything he does that feels incredibly dangerous.
Yeah, and it the scene like sort of accentuates some of those points. Like it becomes slow motion for like a few shots when he's like breaking that dude's neck and stuff, and it's his face going, oh, like it's so good.
I don't want to like call this too early because there's so many good actors in the show, but he might be my favorite. He might be my favorite.
Yeah, I kind of think it's his best role that he's ever done.
Oh, it's his best role for sure.
Yeah,
but as far as the show goes, I don't know if I want to stake my claim there to the yet.
I mean, it's a, I don't know. I think it's a good bet. Like just because of his performance in like episode 2, 3, and 4.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's talk about. Obviously, we've already said this before, but then they have the sequence with Fisk where they have a big scuffle, and then Frank escapes prison, basically. Matt is then, he basically follows the money back in the same way he did in season 1. and he finds the farm where Nobu is, and he like, it's one of the grimmest kind of little moments that this show gets to do, where when he arrives, he hears blood.
Yeah.
And it's like, what the fuck? It's such a fantasy ass, weird little, like, kind of almost like a foreshadowing little horror moment of like, you're going to see some shit.
Mm-hmm.
And works brilliantly here.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting how it's kind of the show's motif, blood. You know, the opening credits are like blood, right? So, and then, yeah, it's just like a little reminder. It's like, oh yeah, this is like a pretty important symbol of the show.
You've preempted my next note, which is then when we cut back as he's walking through, we get the opening credits music playing as he's walking through the space. So like it's related to the blood. I've written here, seemingly a prelude to Nobu's return, or it's blood, right? I think it's blood. It's definitely blood related. Me slowly losing my mind as I watch the show. Yeah, there's something here about blood and like the reason the suit is red is so that criminals can't see him bleed. All of that stuff is at play here. Obviously, the opening credits are all, blood forming different shapes. Matt is constantly bloody. We get Karen talking in, earlier context of the first season about, actually it's Claire talking about the saints who, end up bloodied and alone. Like there's something happening here about sacrifice and blood, and it's all just sort of in the big thematic ooze of this show.
Ew, thematic ooze.
Gross. Don't get that on your skin. It's gonna be rash, okay?
It's gonna connect some random dots on your body.
Yeah, you don't want that.
In an arbitrary way, yeah.
In an arbitrary but meaningful way. That's how thieves work, right?
Pretty sure.
Yeah. And then we get, obviously Nobu appears, and Matt says, "You're dead," and Nobu says, "There is no such thing."
Mm-hmm.
And I punch the air and I go, "Good dialogue." And then the credits roll in that sequence, in that order. If you go back and watch it on Disney Plus now, you can actually hear me quietly in the background go, "Yeah." They edited that in for some reason. I don't understand why. It's a great ending to the episode, and it sets up a pretty fun little moving piece, episode in the next one that really is just like a lot of plot stuff that moves pretty quickly. And for that reason, like I don't have a ton of notes for next episode. But yeah, I mean, it's happening. We're moving toward kind of the, I guess, really like the kind of big climax and the reveal of like what all of this is about, which is really the lead into the the Defenders.
The Defenders, yeah.
Something about proper nouns tonight. It's not happening. Yeah. Do you have anything before we talk about episode 10?
No. I just think Nobu is a lot cooler this season.
He's way cooler.
That's all I got. Yeah.
A ninja back from the dead is way cooler than a ninja who isn't back from the dead.
That's exactly right.
That's how genre works, Pat.
Yep. That's what I want. That's what I want more of.
Exactly.
Yeah.
More weird guys coming back from the grave. All right, let's talk about episode 23, The Man... Nope, that's the one we just... Nope, this is the one we're doing. The Man of the Box, season 2, episode 10. This is a weird one. This was written by a bunch of people. The story was by John C. Kelly, and the teleplay was by Whit Anderson and Snea Course, and it was directed by Peter Hoare. Unusual for Daredevil. Usually the screenplay is written by the writer, but not this time for some reason. Just notable. It fucked up the rhythm of how I've been preparing the show notes, but that's fine. Okay, let's hear the summary, Pat.
Daredevil convinces Mahoney to take the children being used at the farm to Claire. Learning of Frank's escape, Nelson, Murdock, and Paige meet with Reyes at the courthouse. She reveals the truth about the sting and the death of Frank's family. Before they can decide on anything, Reyes is gunned down and Foggy catches a stray round to the shoulder. Matt confronts Fisk in prison and plays a gambit, confirming his suspicion the Kingpin helped Frank escape. Meanwhile, Elektra attempts to escape New York. She's apprehended by a thug on Stick's payroll who she kills. During her investigation for the bulletin, Karen is saved by Frank, confirming that he is not behind the shootings. The exterior of the hospital is infected by ropes as the Hand move in silence, inching toward Daredevil.
You know, real plot, quick episode. The pacing on this one's kind of... It's a long episode, but it feels like it's quick. Which is, again, one of the things this show does really well. I've got a few things at the top I want to talk about immediately that I thought were interesting. I think I like that Daredevil has this kind of Batman mode thing where he has all these contacts that he can call on, and these contacts go and talk to each other, and they say, like, a mutual friend.
Right.
I just watched the Batman again, and Jim Gordon does that a bunch where he's like, you know, our mutual friend, but he's referring to Batman. Happens in The Dark Knight Rises as well. It's great. I love this stuff. I love a bit of espionage and deception when it comes to my superhero stuff, you know?
Yeah.
Then I've got... I forgot about this. I've written down, Claire exists in a perpetual state of, when will Matt fuck up my life next?
Yeah, because she's always so harried.
Because he brings the children to her, right? That's what's happened. And then she gives him, she's like, you know, you're in pain. And she says, you know, she's like, here, take this. And he says, what is it? She says, it's aspirin, Catholic morphine. Which is very funny. It's a great line.
I don't get it. It's just because Catholics aren't allowed to take drugs, or
Catholics don't like drugs, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's not cool to do drugs and stuff, kids. And if you're
Catholics
Catholic...
drink?
Yeah, that's the one thing they can do, and priests do that. There's a lot of alcoholic priests.
I see.
I'm sure that'll come up in something we watch eventually. It's a real issue. Because that's the one thing they're able to do. It's all they do. Turns out the church might be bad. Who would have guessed? Okay, next thing I want to talk about. I just had this noted. Those are just bullet points at the top of my notes here. Matt has this super hearing moment where he hears like... I think he hears the ninjas coming or something like that. And I've written down here, Patrick, if you had Matt Murdock's super hearing, what would you do with it?
If I don't know. Just be able to hear people better and not ask people to repeat what they say in conversations. That's like all the time.
Yeah?
Yeah.
But, you know, how would you use it for profit or gain or good?
It's a good question. I don't know. I'd probably think of some harebrained scheme that I think is like bulletproof, and then I'd get called out.
Arrested immediately, yeah.
Yeah. How would you use it?
I don't know. That's why I was asking you. I would probably do... I know me well enough to know that I would use this to do some ridiculous, like... Something silly to, like, you know, promote or somehow, like... I would try and do a social good with it, and it would go horribly wrong, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I just know me, and I know that that's my instinct. Yeah, and it would backfire and make things worse than they were.
I'll just go sit at a cafe and just eavesdrop, you know, on random people's conversations.
Oh, that's a good... Yeah, okay. Yeah. Get some character inspo.
As they're leaving, I'd give them unsolicited advice.
Oh, that's really good.
Yeah.
You walk up, so you're like, listen... He is not the man for you. You gotta leave him and go live with your sister for a while. You gotta take a break. This isn't it.
They're like, what? Weren't you sitting at like the other side of the cafe? Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, I just had a feeling, you know? Arrested again, immediately.
Yeah.
All of these schemes end up with both of us getting arrested. Because we're not good with this stuff. We shouldn't be allowed to have it.
At least we'd hear the cops coming.
They'd never catch up to us because we'd always be one step ahead.
I mean, yeah, you could do a lot of bad things with it, couldn't you? Like, yeah.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I was thinking about this because, like, Matt uses it to, like, stop crime and stuff, which obviously we are incapable of doing because we're not trained to do ninja stuff or to do Batman stuff. But I was like, there must be some utility of this. And it just made me think of that thing Alan Moore says, which is like, outside of fighting criminals, most superpowers are useless. And I think this is one of them where it's like, yeah, the utility here is pretty limited.
That's kind of true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's also classic Alan Moore. To be like, yeah, comics are dumb and superpowers are stupid.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Gotta love him. Gotta love him or hate him. You know, he's one of the guys out there doing it. Let us know in the comments or email us. What would you do if you had Matt's super hearing? I'm curious because I know some of y'all would, have some good, crazy, harebrained schemes I want to hear about.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay, this is the scene where Karen and Matt have their weird courtroom step moment, right?
Yeah.
Where, yeah, you're right. He's walking up the stairs and she kind of lets him know that she's there, even though he knows she's there and was going to keep walking and pretend that he didn't know that she was there. I love this
fun.
show.
Yeah, it does that a lot. Hey, like it never dwells on it that Matt knows that he's just putting on an act, but like it hardly ever calls attention to it, and then he's always like, "Oh, Karen, is that you?" Like,
yeah, it's great. This is also again reminding me of something that we talked a little bit about in season 1. But Matt being blind, the people around him have a sort of a forced proximity with him because they have to constantly touch him and guide him and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And in a moment where like Karen doesn't want to be close to him, she's forced to be physically close to him.
Mm-hmm.
Just interesting.
There's a similar thing in the first episode we covered where, Matt arrives at the courtroom. Foggy's really mad at him, but then Frank comes in and then Matt goes, "Explain the situation to me." And then Foggy, he says, "He looks better than I ever have in a suit." And he's, it's a bit of a joke, right? Like, yeah, sort of forces the situation to be a bit lighter.
Yeah, it lets them get the more comedic stuff in there.
Yeah.
And also has like a peculiar effect on the relationships he has where he seems to relentlessly surround himself with just the people he's the closest with for potentially this reason. Like he has a very small circle of... That's also because he's fucking Daredevil. But also, there is an aspect of it... There are only a few people that he is interested in being frequently physically intimate with in this aspect.
Mm-hmm.
Which makes sense. He's a big loner. He's a big sad Catholic boy. He's
big emo boy.
He's such a big emo boy. It only gets worse as this story goes on too.
Yeah.
They then obviously have their big confrontation with Reyes. And this is a really cool little maneuver for her character right at the end here where she comes across so differently than we've ever seen her before, right? She's in this state of like panic. She's in her sweats. Clearly, she was doing something else when she got the call that Frank had escaped. And she suddenly feeling guilty. She tells them everything, right? She's like, yeah, we fucked up the sting and we did this and we didn't get rid of the civilians and his family got in the way and that's how they died. And then she asks them to break privilege to help avoid people getting hurt. And if you think about it, functionally, the law exists to help people, and she's asking Matt to break the law. She's asking them to do what Matt does as Daredevil, which is break the law in order to help people in a different way, to go outside of the law to do that. Which I think is kind of, it's a fairly obvious maneuver in some sense, where you go, yeah, Matt does shit like this all of the time. He would have no compunctions about this. Karen does shit like this all of the time. She would have no compunctions about this. And so it's notable that Foggy is the one who is like, whoa. What are we doing here?
Yeah.
You fucked up and you want us to break the law? Come on. And then it doesn't matter, right?
Yeah. Fuck, what was I gonna say? I can't remember. Yeah.
If it was important, it'll come back, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't matter because Reyes gets shot real dead very quickly. And as we said in the summary, Foggy cops one in the shoulder.
Yeah.
Pretty violent.
I like, yeah. I think I said this before, but I like how Blake Tower is like, continues to be kind of like a character that keeps getting developed, and he's the one that sort of explains the situation, and he, gives a bit of backstory afterwards about his involvement or his knowledge of the sting and stuff like that. I don't know. It's interesting that he's just there, and then he becomes like, a pretty prominent character in season 3.
This shit does that all the time, though, right?
Yeah.
Little side characters become main guys.
Okay, I think I remember what I was going to say. So yeah, I mean, Reyes's reveal about her decision to not clear the park is pretty interesting. It's a pretty immoral thing to do. Like, and you know, the reason why she did it was because she wanted the sting to go better, in order to make her look better, in order, so she could get more promotions or whatever. And the show kills her for it, essentially. Like, a bit of a comeuppance. It's just a morally dubious kind of, like, it's a bit random as well. The show's statement on morality here, I don't know.
Well, I think there's also this argument to be made that, like, it's doing a bad thing now, but with the hopes of stopping a much worse thing later. Which is kind of what Frank does, right? Where he's like, I do the murders in order to stop them, because the thing that you do is insufficient. It's not enough to knock them down. You need to take them out of the game. And this feels like a similar kind of justification in some ways, where it's like, we have to put them in danger, but we got to do this one. We have to be strong enough to do this one bad thing to prevent more bad things in the future. Which is sort of like a very ahistorical view of morality, where it kind of assumes that there are no other ways than the thing you've conceived of to solve this problem or to stop that bad thing from happening.
Which is why she went into such a panic when it, predictably went to shit, and tried her whole career to cover it up, going so far as to, try and murder Frank, order the DNR and get him executed and stuff. Like, in retrospect, like, Reyes is kind of like a pretty awful person. And yeah, no, it's just interesting that in the last scene that they, shine a sympathetic light on her by revealing that she's got a daughter, and she's, concerned about the well-being of her daughter. I don't know. It's cool bit of texture. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good texture. It's really good texture. I think that's a really good way to say it. Yeah, it complicates what could otherwise be quite a morally obvious thing. Which is kind of the show's MO. Like, that's no one is wholly good or bad, or everyone has aspects of villainy within them. Everyone has aspects of good. And, like, no one's a simple kind of flat thing. And that's what makes this all kind of tick together. Yeah. Is, she dies and you go, well, she did do a terrible thing, but now her daughter's an orphan. And
just the persistence with what she did, like, all those things about, throughout her career about trying to cover it up, kind of gives the impression that, like, even though she says, I don't really care about my career anymore, like, if this did all go away, like, she would go back to being that sort of Machiavellian, like, political schemer.
Yeah.
It's what I feel.
And in some ways that's Machiavelli's point, right? Which is, people do these things and they always expect there's a day when they'll get to stop doing them after they've started doing them. There's this expectation that you'll get to the end of a process of doing this stuff and you'll never do it again. And you'll never need to do it again. The truth is that, like,
right.
One wrong, it's been a while since I've read Machiavelli. So but this is like the broad picture, right? If you engage with this stuff and you cross that line and you beginning begets more doing. And suddenly you've done what Reyes has done, where it's like, well, yeah, like, I had to get rid of Frank, but he should have died anyway. They had no reason to live. Like, he shouldn't have lived. He came back from the fucking dead. Like, he was dead anyway. So that wasn't such a bad thing. Oh, now I need to cover up the fact that he's come back, and then now I need to disgrace this guy and get him fired from his job because he has information that could reveal that I did that. And then it's just this, like, it constantly spirals out of control, and it sort of paints the way in which people that put themselves in these positions are culpable for it because they don't stop. And it's because they've assumed they needn't continue, and so they they kind of I mean it's the pattern of every lie that's ever been told in history, right? Which is the assumption that if I just get through this, there will be no other consequence.
It's really interesting. That's like such a human kind of motivation, isn't it? Like, I need to do this one bad thing, but then I'll do it and then it'll be over. It'll be behind me. Like, yeah.
You should, hey, listener, you should read Machiavelli. It's all very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it'll really make you think about your life a lot and go, that explains why that thing didn't work out. It's one of those. He's one of those type of guys. I had forgotten that after this, Matt goes to see Fisk because Matt assumes it's the Punisher, right? Everyone assumes it's the Punisher.
Yes.
Yeah. And so Matt's going to confirm that Fisk helped the Punisher escape.
It's such a Matt thing to do, or is it instinct to just go straight to the fucking enemy?
Bro.
Like, did you do this? Like,
yeah, was this you?
Yeah.
And then Fisk has this line which I adore where he says, sometimes I'm glad I'm in here. The fate of New York City is out of my hands for once. And Matt is immediately like, you fucking lying to, I know that you did this. You're lying to me.
Yeah.
But and ironically, he's not behind this, is he?
No, he's not.
So it's like, but he's lying to Matt about this specific thing, but he's also not lying about this specific thing. Yeah.
And the thing about how he's glad he's in here is also like there's some kernel of truth to that, He says, I can't remember, I think it's last episode that, he finds it refreshing how animalistic prison is. Sort of
gross.
He's finding his true self.
Yeah, he's finding the Fisk that we all come to know and fear.
Yeah.
Also, so I think I know the answer, but I wanted to raise this as just like a textual question, which is why does Matt play the Vanessa card here? Is it to get a rise from Fisk to then get his in? Like, he's trying to get Fisk to assault him to prove that Fisk isn't in chains, to prove that Fisk is in control, to prove that Fisk let Frank out, right? That's the chain of reasoning.
Right. Yes. I think kind of think the reason he brings it up is the same reason why he so like brashly goes to see Fisk in the first place. It is kind of purely out of emotion. He didn't get what he want, so fuck it. He's just gonna like attack Fisk, and in the only way he can. But then it also is a bit of a play to get him to confess to being in charge of the prison. Yeah.
There's also an aspect of the kind of Catholic self-flagellation here, where he's blown up his entire life, and he might in some aspects be punishing himself for that because he knows that Fisk is going to hurt him if he's right. Like it's that like validation, but at an expense, kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, he's in a lot of emotional turmoil. He's just like, fuck it, dude. Like, I'm just gonna go for it. Just do the most destructive, sort of chaotic thing he can. Yeah,
100%. And spoilers, kind of works out. It's gonna have consequences later that are unforeseen currently, but in this moment, he gets away with it.
Yes.
We then cut to Elektra going on a fancy private flight to get away. This is the one time where I was able to confirm the accents. The French here is very good, if you're wondering.
Yeah, nice. I was wondering.
Her accents.
It sounded very good.
I
couldn't even
on point.
I couldn't even pass out the syllables, and that's how I knew it was good.
Yeah, his is a little clipped, but that makes me think he might be like Southern French, maybe. Because it's got a bit more of the German kind of like clippiness to it. But it's good French. Good job, guys. Make the Japanese better though. What the fuck are we doing?
Yeah, even in that last episode, that main sort of like balding dude, he's not a native speaker. His Japanese is really good, but like you can tell like he's not a native.
You can
speaker.
feel it, yeah.
Yeah.
I wondered if the guy was my speculation there is either Southern French or maybe Canadian. Hard to tell.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, it's good stuff.
So, Ella de Young, Elektra's actor, is French. Then is she? Must be.
I think she's Greek.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Interesting.
I think she's literally Greek. I don't know though, and there's no way for us to look that up.
Yeah,
we should
it'll
live in
remain a
ignorance.
mystery, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, I think it's I don't know who made this point, so I don't want to launder their argument. So I'll just say it myself, which is there is something notable about there is some aspect of ambiguity about we know she's Greek from the the show tells us that, but we also don't know what it means to be the heiress to like a billionaire empire. Like she speaks seemingly Japanese, Chinese, French, like what, like, you know, like there is a reason for her to know all this stuff, textually at least, in a way that us mere mortals do not. I do English real good sometimes, and then a little bit of French still. That's it.
Fun fact. Ella de Young is in one of the Call of Duty games.
What?
I think yeah, she's in World War II, I think.
Yeah,
in the
right.
zombies
Okay.
mode. Yeah, along with David Tennant.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah.
Hey guys, get a check. Do it. Get that bag. You gotta get that bag.
They always get some random A-list celebrities for those zombies modes. It's weird.
They've got the money for it. Activision has more money
Yeah.
than they know what to do with. So
Yeah, that is true. Especially now.
this was the brief video game part of the conversation for a moment. Prepare for several years of it potentially with the Assassin's Creed show. The more I work on that pre-production, the more I'm like, should we commit to this? Is this insane? And then I'm like, yeah, but all I do is insane shit. So maybe that's, I don't know. We'll see.
You know, I learned the other day that the voice actress for Lucy is like the main actress from The Good Place.
I knew that.
Yeah,
Already.
it's crazy.
What's funny is I knew her from Assassin's Creed before I'd seen her in anything else.
Yeah.
So when they were like, oh yeah, she's doing The Good Place, I was like, huh? What? Yeah, I mean, that was early days when you could kind of get people like that, you know? That's it's Kristen Bell, right?
Yeah, Kristen Bell, that's right, yeah.
Good stuff. All right, let's move briskly along from there. So we then go to Karen kind of explaining to what's the boss's name at the paper? I can never remember.
Ellison.
She's explaining to Ellison that Frank has a code, and that's why she, you know, that's the reason that she believes in him. And he's like, I don't give a shit. I'm coming with you because if you get shot off, you know, I'll feel bad. She's like, you know, I'm not a little, and he's like, no, I would have done this with Ben as well. Like, this isn't, it's not because you're a woman. I'm not being sexist. This is just a crazy thing to do.
I think it's interesting how throughout these, even just throughout like the last maybe 6 episodes, like for a long time, Karen has been going on about, no, he has a code, you know, he's not a killer. And then this is like the only real bit where someone tells her like, hey, you might have projected onto him. And then Karen has a moment of doubt. She goes, really? Like, you think I projected? I don't know why, but that was pretty interesting to me. That no one's really called her out on that. But it makes a lot of sense that it's Ellison who does that, like, you know, a reporter, like, yeah.
It's also noteworthy that that this is just after Foggy has said it might be time to look for a life outside of this office, because the life inside of that office wasn't challenging her assumptions.
Yeah.
This is a place where she might be able to really put herself in the fullness of context with reality in a way that she hasn't been, maybe.
Yeah, no, it seems like it's such a such a perfect sort of career for her, honestly.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It's born to be a reporter, this woman, truly.
Yeah.
Can never leave anything alone, you know?
Yeah.
Just like I was born to be a Jerry's still out.
Dot.
Jerry's TBC. No, we all know that I was always going to be an author. Okay, let's talk about the rooftop scene with Claire, because that's what comes next in my notes here.
Mm-hmm.
So Matt is watching over the hospital because he anticipates that the Hand are going to come for their children. And when they do, it's going to be a problem. It's going to be some kind of lethal situation. While Foggy is in the room downstairs and Claire is basically petitioning him to go down and just say hi to your friend and be with him. You know, that's what needs to happen. You don't need to be out here suffering. Doesn't even drink the coffee that she brings him, which seems like I don't know why, but I remember the coffee thing so vividly. This is one of the scenes from this season I remember so clearly, and I don't know why. I've just never forgotten.
This scene is always, this whole kind of sequence has always stuck with me as well. This whole rooftop scene. God, I love this scene. Like, just a quiet moment of Matt being a sad boy, and the very accurate and probing speech that Claire gives about
Claire
maybe you need to climb down off that cross of yours and spend some time with us normal people for a change. It's, I mean, this isn't like the kind of conflict that you can only get in like a superhero show, really. And it explores it with a lot of like grace and like just makes it very interesting and makes it very human.
This is also the moment where Matt fully gives up on his life as Matt Murdock. Because she says you need to go downstairs and he doesn't move. And she says you can't hide in that armor forever. She says something like that. Like, she understands what just happened, even if Matt doesn't. And it's, yeah, you're right. It's such an intricate and yet alarmingly simple conversation. And I think it would help this kind of script to have two of the best actors in this scene.
Oh yeah,
doing this work. This is the thing we've been saying this a lot about Daredevil, but it chooses the people, it chooses its actors so well for the roles they're doing, and to have honestly two of the best like kind of contemporary living actors for television in this scene probably does a lot of the work here as well as, you know, to embolden the script to make this the way it is. But the way that Charlie Cox sort of he refuses to engage with Claire's energy even if he's talking to her. He doesn't bring himself up to the level she's at with how seemingly dire she realizes this moment is. He doesn't engage with her on that level. And as this kind of goes on, Rosario Dawson sort of like lets that energy gradually resolve into like she kind of gives in to the fact that that he's already made up his mind.
Yeah.
And as she does that, her energy falls with it. And then at the very end, she gets one last bit kind of up again, which is like, well, like, fucking enjoy your time up here, dude. Like, see ya. Like, gonna go back to the normal people. You know, you should think about it. Yeah, the rhythm of it is absolutely brilliant.
It's almost kind of an uncomfortably relatable situation, honestly. Like, yeah, I've definitely been Matt in this sort of scenario before. Yeah,
I've been Matt and Claire. Like, this is one of those moments where you're trying to talk someone out of it being a type of way, and you're trying to come back to reality, and them just not even meeting you in this space for you to be heard. Not even giving you the latitude to be heard because they're so deeply invested in this thing that you know is bad for them. Yeah,
it's just like he's just so troubled at this particular point. You know, no amount of advice can fix it, pretty much. No. Yeah, it's that kind of feeling. Yeah,
I think that comes back to the big thing the show is thinking about, which is like when the show kind of says, you know, the Murdock boys, they got the devil in them. They, you know, they mean that in the kind of like unleashing this creature, this ferocious animal onto people, you know, battling Jack. You know, when he starts swinging, it's a problem. Matt kind of, you know, will just wail on a dude. But it's also like they have the devil in them in a way that is they are deeply troubled by being alive and what that means for them and what reality means to them and what their relationships mean to them. Like there's an incompatibility that Matt has with regular life that results from that same thing. That results from that, and he tries to resolve that through Catholicism, and it doesn't work. And
if anything, it sort of exacerbates his isolation. Yeah,
it exacerbates his isolation, and so he turns to a place he can hide from that isolation, which is Daredevil, where it self-justifies that isolation. The suffering becomes it gets incorporated into the thing he's doing. It's like a self-healing mechanism.
Yeah, it becomes like an anchor point.
Yeah.
Because it's easy. You don't have to depend on anyone when you're in that state.
And it's that mistake of thinking that the trauma you've been through is like good because it led to this thing. It's he's making that mistake and all the bad things that have happened have led him to Daredevil, and so he should lean into Daredevil because he can do good with it. And Claire recognizes like, no, you're just like you're making yourself into this person who suffers for others when what you need to do is come and be a human for your friend. You need to come and be Matt Murdock for Foggy Nelson, the one guy who is stuck with you through everything. It's a really powerful scene.
Yeah, I guess it's like, wait, I can't remember if it was this episode or last episode, but when he tells Foggy essentially like to fuck off because he, that was all. Foggy went there to more maybe reconcile, and so Matt was the inciting agent of their last encounter, and so he really has in his mind he really has no business going down to Foggy. Like he can't show his face after that. It makes a lot of sense.
And Claire's point is like, no, of course you can. You're the one person he wants to see.
Yeah,
and he just can't. He can't give in to that vulnerability.
Yeah.
It's really quite tragic.
Yeah, I know. That's why I love this season, man. It's all about just really human kind of stuff.
Kind of placed in opposition to the kind of fantasy stuff. Like it draws both into really sharp focus.
Yeah.
I also think there's like an aperture that this season has that is a lot wider when it comes to the way that the show thinks and lets people talk about Daredevil, especially because he's so established now. It's kind of in the same way that The Dark Knight is way more interesting when it comes to the character of the Batman and his position in society than even though I think this is one of those opinions that no one agrees with. I personally prefer Batman Begins. It's just a film that for me, I'm not saying it's better. I just think it's a film that is doing some of the stuff I'm more interested in when it comes to storytelling and the maneuvers it's doing. I think that The Dark Knight is a superior film, but for me, Batman Begins is far more interesting and is working in the spaces I work in a lot more. That being said, my point there was going to be like the fact that the Batman gets to be established means you can have conversations about how the city views him and like what it means for Bruce Wayne to be doing this, and that obviously comes to a head in the conclusion and then the kind of subsequent film. And this very much feels like they've done the work to put themselves in the place where these conversations can be really meaningfully had. In a way that I think in season 1 they are being had, but you're right, they're not at this level yet. He hasn't fucked up enough of his life doing this for it to have the same gravity. Season 1. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, he hasn't built up enough of his life in order to fuck it up in season 1.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Damn. Brutal. Okay, well, let's quickly talk about the little ending here, and then we'll wrap up. I've written down, Karen's got a gun, because of course. Garen loves a gun. We love to see it. And then I've gone, hey, who is killing everybody? Huh? No spoilers.
Guess you'll have to stay tuned and find out.
No spoilies. And then I've also written the contrast cut is misleading because it makes you think it's Fisk, which is clever. I don't think it is, but I was like, oh, that's an immediate red herring. Then we get Fisk in prison eating. Oh yeah, I mean Frank saves Karen, or he's there when the shooting's happening, so we know it's not Frank, which is notable in some ways because it kind of validates Karen's view of Frank.
Yeah.
Beyond that, I mean, I'm sure next episode it will all kind of come to the fore. We then go to prison, and Fisk daintily eating a steak and drinking some red wine while staring at the white blank fucking wall like a goddamn psychopath.
Yep.
Like a little fancy insane man. It's very sinister and it's cool as hell.
Yeah. Why? And then he touches his lip, which reminds him of when he, the inference is that like he's thinking about how hard Matt punches.
Mm-hmm.
He goes, "Bring me the files on Matt Murdock."
He's starting to
put the pieces together,
connect some dots, guys.
Yeah.
Mayhap Matt made a mistake that might have branching consequences for him. Who's to say? I've then got, I don't know who says this, but I've got a quote here. The hand didn't send me, Stick did. Who says that?
The French guy who kills, or who Elektra kills.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Which we had in the show notes. Yeah. The summary. Yeah. Yeah, we then cut back to Elektra. She dispenses the dude who's trying to cause her an issue, trying to stop her from leaving. And he's like, yeah, I was sent by Stick. His Stick can't let any of these kids go. You know?
And we get the Han Solo blaster moment, but for Elektra.
Yeah.
Where we see where she gets her size. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's fun stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Choreography on point, action scene on point, accents also on point. This episode's knocking him setting him up and knocking him down, Pat. Let me tell you.
That guy had some riz. It was inspiring.
Yeah, that guy dropping some game. You'll need to study up, candidly. It helps if you can speak French, I imagine.
Probably. Also helps if you're incredibly handsome, but
yeah, if you're one of the best looking people, you can speak French and you're rich.
Yeah.
It's probably you've got a lot. Your baseline, your foundation is a lot higher than what some of us have done with. I can't walk up to someone and be like, "Have you read Proust?" Like that's not helping me at all.
I'd walk up, be like, "I'll have a Macallan neat." And they'd be like $50, and I'd be like, well, actually,
whoa.
I'll have a Great Northern, actually.
Yeah, I'll find a Great Northern. That's $50. You're overpaying for Macallan if you're paying $50 for a glass. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, that's good to know.
Pat, I live in a world where that is something I have to think about. You know what I'm saying? I'm not buying nice. I'm buying Macallan 12 to be candid. I'm not buying like the nice stuff.
All right, David. No one fucking cares. No,
that's true. Oh, he's on his pretentious shit again. All right. Move it along. Is it 10 or... Hang on, I gotta... Yeah, 12, yeah. I was like, I need to look at the shelf where I have a bottle. It's 12. Calling myself out there. Then really the last thing that happens is the ninjas are kind of ascending the building, and the victims are on some zombie shit. I don't know what the fuck is going on with these guys. It's spooky as hell.
They got activated.
They got activated.
That kid killed his dad. Yeah.
Activate. Like they activate a black sky. Whoa.
Yeah, the callbacks.
Whoa. Verbs. The subtitle of the show should be Daredevil in the Detail. Whoa. Verbs.
Verbs.
It's a big cliffhanger ending. Yeah, I remembered this is how it ends, which is why I segmented it this way, because it's a great cliffhanger, and then the next two episodes are absolute bangers, and then we get the finale.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the season, baby.
Ooh. So are we going to do the next 3 episodes?
So next recording is the next 2.
Okay.
And then we're doing the finale, because we always bang on, and we got a lot to say when we get to the end of the season.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough.
And then the Defenders.
Oh god, I thought we were doing something in between.
No, that's after the Defenders. I think after the
Okay.
Defenders is that no. I had the supplemental, which is Elektra. I had that after season 3. We'll see how we go. We might do something supplemental after the Defenders. We might need a break.
Yeah. God, that's gonna take it out of us.
Yeah, we might need to. I feel like if we did Elektra after that, it would only make it worse. We might need to find something. We might do something Batman related. Who knows?
I'm not like you, David. I can't like watch bad stuff.
Punish yourself.
Yeah,
On purpose.
I just can't do it, man.
Speaking of, my hardback arrived today.
Ooh.
Look at that bad boy.
Ooh.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Well, actually, I think I.
You got yours too? Yeah, there you go. Go to UnderInk.Press, grab yourself a copy of Give Up After 3, historical analysis of Sherlock's lost final episode. Come lose your mind with me.
It's actually it's a nice feeling book.
Let me tell you,
Good quality.
The quality and the dimensions and it's a nice hardback. They've done well.
It is. It's very good.
And they've nailed the print layout as well, which is rare. Like, it's just perfect. It's a good physical object is what I'm saying. And the words within it are even better, hopefully. I'm very proud of it.
What font is this?
It's Garamond. It's always Garamond.
Okay.
The best font there is.
I see.
If you use any of the font, you're a coward.
Strong font opinions.
Listen, it was a big part of it was not a big part. It was a small part of my degree that I overindulged in. But yeah, it's if you're on this feed, you can listen to the show that was the kind of background research that inspired the book. I basically took all of the research that I did across 9 months of that show, and then that's the book that resulted from it. So yeah, you can go order yourself a hard. If you're in America, it'll arrive very quickly. The rest of the world takes kind of 2 to 3 weeks. Or it's on Amazon, wherever you find good books.
Ooh.
Go grab yourself a copy and come lose your mind with me. Because boy, by the end of that, you can tell I'm a little out of touch with reality in some interesting ways.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that's the show, Pat. Is that the show?
That was a good show.
Yeah, we did it once again.
Yeah.
Boys back at it. Pat, tell the folks where they can find you on the internet if they want to consume more of your good, interesting thoughts.
Me personally?
I mean,
well, if you
the stuff you make, it's up to you. I don't want to tell you how to do your plugs.
I run a podcast with my friend Mitchie. It's called A Method to the Madness. You can find it on YouTube, Spotify, SoundCloud, iTunes, and Stitcher. You might need to look up A Method to the Madness podcast. And
The links will be in the show notes anyway. Just scroll down and click on that.
And you can find, we have a website, AMTTM.com. You find all our socials from there.
You can go find our 5-part deep dive into James Bond, where we watched all of the Daniel Craig James Bond films. And very soon,
That's right.
if we get our shit together and I do the pre-production work, which I haven't done yet, we'll be covering the Matrix films. I just haven't done my job on that yet because I've been busy, but that'll be
no.
Around
that's all right.
soon.
We've got so much things like lined up that we've just been slack dogs and not really doing.
You just gotta start doing.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm doing too many. That's my issue.
Yeah.
Like I said at the top, you can go find all the stuff that we make. You can go grab yourself some merch. You can grab yourself a book. You can grab everything we've talked about that we make over at UnderInk.Press. It's UnderInk.Press. You find the links in the show notes. We're obviously produced and a part of Zero Indent. You can go find our articles at ZeroIndent.com or go support us on Patreon if you fancy doing that. We're a fully independent publication that seeks to talk about and dedicate study to underobserved works of fiction that we think are interesting, specifically genre fiction, because one of the biggest things that I learned kind of over the last 10 years of doing stuff online is that there's not a lot of people approaching genre fiction in the same ways they approach literary fiction, and with the same kind of, I guess, lens, and that's something that I really value, so you can go check that out. And because I don't do enough things, I've also started a Substack that is more about culture and the internet and my thoughts about, like, I guess the structural ecology of social media and what it means for like us as humans. Editing David here. I actually say the wrong name for the Substack in this recording. My Substack is culturemachine.substack.com. culturemachine.substack.com, where you can go and hear my thoughts about the ecology of social media at the end of the world. That is like, I'm planning monthly-ish at this stage, but if you want to hear me talk about the internet and culture and what that means for like humans, that's a place you can go to find that. Because I didn't really have a place for that. It didn't really fit with ZeroIndent, didn't really fit with UnderInk, so I figured why not start a Substack and see how that works. So go check that out. And as always, wherever you watch or listen to this, we appreciate the heck out of it. Please consider giving us a rating or a review on or a comment wherever you find it. We appreciate that. It helps more people find it. But to be completely honest, the best way to help the show is to send it to one person you think might enjoy it. Someone in your life who you go, oh man, like they love Daredevil, or they love the way that these guys would think and talk about this stuff. We don't do any advertising outside of our own network and shows for the stuff we do. We're entirely fueled by our community and word of mouth, so I appreciate it. I also wanted to shout out Chris, who's a new dedicated listener who has so far commented on every single episode. Shout out to Chris. You're one of the boys out there. You know.
Thanks for listening, Chris.
Yeah, we appreciate it, and thank you everybody for listening. We'll catch you next time, where we will be talking about season 2, episode 11, and season 2, episode 12. So make sure you do your reading ahead of time if you've been watching along. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching and listening. We'll catch you next time.
See you later.